Is there a random blank screen for everyone? Or?
All right. I think the recording's on. Welcome, everyone. This is the SIG Instrumentation meeting. Today is June 24th. And we have a couple of items on the agenda. And I think, Elena, do you want to take the first one, or do you just want me to make the announcement?
You can make the announcement.
So just a reminder, code freeze is on July 8th. So we've got exactly 2 weeks to go. So make sure that you get everything in that you want to. And on that note, I think we have a couple of KEP reviews. Did you want to take these?
I think we just have the one.
Or...
I threw this on the agenda, and it's mostly to, I guess, pester David, because we only have 2 KEPs targeted for this release. So one of them is the structured logging stuff, and that's being handled by working group structured logging. So we're just deferring to them. So the other is tracing. That's our problem. So, and I saw that David's PR, I think, is ready for review. So I just wanted to make sure that we had it on the agenda, that we made sure that we've got reviewers and approvers assigned from the instrumentation side, that if we need them from other SIGs, we know who they are, so we can go pester them. Because I know this is like slipped now like 3 releases or something like that, and that doesn't feel great. So
I think we definitely have good coverage from the instrumentation side. We have Lily's reviewed it, Frederick's reviewed it, and Hans also taken a couple passes. And I think, Alana, did you review it as well?
Yeah,
I haven't looked at it.
I've been banned from reviewing it, basically because I have I'm predisposition bias or something. So Level Lamp says I can't review it.
That's fine.
So do you need me to take a look?
Do you,
I think we've.
I think
there've been like 3 SIG Instrumentation members that have reviewed it. I think.
Yeah.
Do you know
it's like 2 minute
Lava Lamp's okay with Liggett's review?
Yeah. I think he's happy to have anyone review it that's not himself.
Okay, sounds good. Then I've been going back and forth with Jordan. The last thing that we're discussing is just where in the API server handler stack this belongs. So once we decide that, then this PR should be good. Then there will be 2 follow-up PRs. One that adds the test and another that adds the etcd client instrumentation so that we can actually connect this with Lily's work in etcd.
Is there anything special that needs to be done other than pass the context?
So one, we need to add the interceptors. So it's sort of like the gRPC version of adding an HTTP handler or using the...
Yeah, no, I'm familiar. Yeah.
And then because we don't want to use globals in the API server, we need to plumb the tracer provider all the way through. So there'll be a bunch of functions that it gets added to, and then we're just going to use the standard gRPC interceptors.
Are you sure?
Thank you for doing that right off the bat.
Who said no globals?
Lava Lamp.
Oh, darn. It would be just so much simpler because it would be like a 1-line change.
No,
I mean, like,
no,
yes, I know, but it's just like a 1-line diff, you know?
Yeah, but it makes it so complicated because it imports etcd as well, and it would be a huge mess, I think.
Yeah, so look for those. I hope that those will be less contentious than the first one has been, since they're doing fairly straightforward things, and there's not as many things to have opinions about, I think. So yeah, I'll send those around.
Less opinions.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I've got. I also signed up to write a blog, and if you'd like to help, I know I've been doing most of this, so I'm going to assume that I'll write the whole thing. But if anyone's interested and wants to collaborate, I'm happy to work together.
I'm happy to look it over. Yeah, whatever you need.
Thanks.
Yeah, if you need a review, more than happy to. But like, this is your work; you should get the glory.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, cool. Anything else on that note? If not, then I think this is Lily's point, but I think this is the continuation of our discussion from last week, I think.
Yeah, I just remembered we started a discussion, I think, in triage, and then we were like, let's park it for this one. I forget which metric it was, but it was
it was long running gauge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice, yeah.
The long running gauge versus the like more specific metric that was a duplicate that we don't know what to do about.
API registered.
And maybe we can just
Han, do you have the
give
link?
some context to the people who weren't there and for the recording.
Let me find it. Hold on. It's just so hard to find stuff on GitHub. I get.
Yeah, once you've commented on like 500 Kubernetes PRs, good luck with your GitHub notifications.
Oh, it's impossible to find stuff. Hold on.
I mean, we should be able to find it fairly quickly by like latest SIG instrumentation label PRs, right? Because that's how we found it through triaging.
Yes, I'm just looking in the ones that I have participated in.
Or just look at your browser history for last week.
Can't find it. I cannot find it. It's got to be an open issue. Hold on, let me look for this. It's an open pull request, right?
No, there was an issue. Let me see if I can dig it up.
There was an issue and a PR. Yes. Yes, if we can have more than one person looking for it, that would be great because I am.
Found it, I think.
Okay, there you go. Awesome.
Let me put it in the chat. Is this it? I just searched for long running gauge.
Oh yeah, that's probably a good one. I was actually looking at my notifications. I was looking for the other.
Yeah,
metric.
don't do that. You will never find it.
I found the PR counterpart to that one.
I think the discussion was whether what we want to actually promote stable, right?
Yeah, I mean, this was an instance of that.
Mm-hmm.
And my argument for it is that this is basically request count. It's a specialized request count, and it includes stuff that is not in request, and it includes data that's not in request count.
So I like this. What I would ask for is if we promote a metric like this, could we have some sort of a signal of these kind of requests failing, right? Because ultimately that's what we like. What is it that we want to detect with this metric, right? And I guess it's something to the extent of they're being interrupted for some reason, or right? Like what is the
latency and counts? So if you have too many, that would be bad. If latencies would be really short, that would also be bad because these are long running ones. And turnover.
So I guess that would be watches opened. I guess that you can
do that off of off of
well, no, this is a gauge, right? So we would need a metric for like watches started, I guess, or something like that, because that is the thing that you're worried about, right? If there's a high increase in watches being opened, or the total length of a watch being short.
Let me actually look at the metric. What does the metric actually look like?
if I'm not mistaken, I think it's the currently active watches is what the metric represents today.
So maybe to summarize, there were a bunch of issues that we saw, right? So one is like, so issue one is we have the duplicated metrics, where like one is kind of a subset of the other. And then another is that the name of the one that is the superset has gauge in it. So it like doesn't comply with the metrics naming policy, so we can't make it stable. Was there anything else that was a problem here?
I'm just trying to recall the discussion from last week. I think we started looking at this, and then Han was saying he would like to promote a metric like that, but there hasn't actually been a proposal to promote any of them, right? Okay, okay. So because I was confused because I was looking at these pull requests and I'm like, where did that discussion come from?
Yeah, so I put issue 3. We don't have a proposal for either of them to promote them to stable.
Yeah,
but like we think maybe we should consider them for it.
No, neither of these are in their current state promotable. But I am saying something like this.
That's what I'm saying. We don't have anything to say. We want something like this and a plan to promote it to stable. I would say, I guess there's also sort of like issue 4, which is that we don't own this metric. It's owned by API Machinery. So they should be driving that.
I can fix it.
And I mean, we can make specific recommendations in order to get it promoted, right?
Yeah,
and I think that's sort of what the discussion today so far was. And it seems like we all largely agree. It just needs to be a little bit more clear in our intention.
Yeah. So I guess like, given this issue list, does this give us a clear roadmap? Like, we know that we have one that's a subset of the other, so we want to get rid of the subset metric. We know that there's a violation of the naming policy, so we want to fix that, and then we want to make it stable. Like, is that enough of a proposal?
I think that one thing that I'm a bit confused by is we haven't really fully agreed on what makes it stable, at least judging by the previous discussion, right? What makes a metric be stable? Because last time I think we discussed like if it's an alert metric or a dashboard metrics, then we should make it stable, but we haven't really fully decided, have we?
I work backwards, I work from SLOs, like metrics that are used in SLOs are definitely like ones, right? Metrics that are commonly used in alerts.
Yeah. Maybe we can just document that somewhere so that.
I think that it would be fair to say. Sorry, Lily. For this one, I would say that like it's probably a fair thing to promote to a stable metric in the sense that like if we ask a question of how do we use this to like quantify an actual symptom that an operator can respond to, we can say, oh, look, the tail latency is really high. That's going to be user impacting. And so like they're going to see that. So that would be a problem.
Yeah, I think we all agree on the intention. I'm not sure this metric, either of those metrics actually give us that today. And so I think that's the only gap that we haven't actually figured out, but we all agree on the intention. So I think that's just the thing that we need to figure out.
So how about this is a proposal? We deprecate both of them and we create a new one that looks better.
I think that that's what we want to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Though I think I wouldn't do any of that until we've actually figured out what a metric would look like that actually fulfills our requirements. I'm fairly certain that none of these will, but I'm not a fan of deprecating things without having a plan in place.
I have a plan. My plan is to make it almost parallel to the request metrics, which there are 2 of them. There's the total and there's the seconds. But in this case, like we probably didn't even need the total because the count's already in the histogram. But in this case, since it's a gauge, we actually do need to.
Yeah.
Actually,
this feels incredibly similar to the gRPC streaming metrics that are in the gRPC Go
Library.
gRPC Prometheus library.
They're auto included.
Yeah.
So
We
I've
can't do anything
assigned
about
on
those.
an
Yeah.
action to put together a proposal to drive, like first like coming up with a replacement metric and deprecating the other two.
The second thing was, do we need a beta?
Oh yeah, that should be a totally separate topic. So let me split
Yeah.
that one out in the notes.
Because if we have beta, then like we can actually mark stuff that exists today as beta because people likely depend on them. Everything is alpha, and so people are just like, oh, it's alpha, we can just do whatever we want, and then they just break stuff.
In hindsight, I'm not sure alpha was ever a good name because many metrics just are never gonna be promoted, right? And it feels like alpha seems wrong. Like giving it that name sounds like it will be promoted at one point or another.
Yeah, and then it's going to be promoted in like 2 releases or something, like per usual in Kubernetes or something like that. Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I think only beta, like, isn't it beta features that are expected to be graduated, or?
I think formally you're right, but I think the user expectation is different.
Well, that can be fixed to yeah, but it's a
Well,
separate.
these are not features, right? These are like things that people alert and graph off of, right? Their
So-
charts break.
I will say for like from the enhancement planning perspective, it's a problem right now that we don't have beta because if people add metrics as part of an alpha implementation and they want to graduate their feature to beta, there's no corresponding change promoting those metrics. So then all of a sudden it's like they get promoted to stable at the last minute and there was no instrumentation review in between. And at that point, it might be too late for us to give feedback on a thing.
We can introduce two. We can introduce an experimental and also a beta.
Well, so alpha should be experimental. I think the problem is right now that the expectations are not aligned with that because literally everything is alpha.
Yeah, yeah. What I'm saying is if we have an experimental, then basically we can align alpha, beta, and GA to be with features, right? So like when people are promoting, like right now when people have caps and
I
features.
agree. I think that alpha should be the experimental and that we should have a policy to basically say, if you've got an alpha metric in for like any number of time, we are going to like either force promote it to beta or remove it because it's supposed to be experimental.
So I think what etcd did is very similar to what how I think about a lot of the metrics. I think etcd, and Lily, correct me if I'm wrong, I think etcd has a specific debug prefix where they say these are metrics that are kind of bound to the code surrounding it. And so when this code changes, inevitably these metrics will go away probably or change significantly. And I would like to have something like this to signify this. There's no promotion process for this metric that's ever going to happen. It's purely reflecting an internal code state,
like metric dot internal or something, like class dot internal.
We have feature flags that basically mean like feature could, like if someone doesn't decide to graduate their feature, technically that this is the case that the metric should appear optionally only when, or it should appear as an experimental as metric that like can be removed at
or
not available.
.dev, right? .dev, like.
I mean, I like debug metrics. I don't know, but that could just be my predisposition of having worked with etcd for like 5 years, right? But I guess what I was also trying to say on the same note, I think the majority of metrics that we have are actually on that note. And the
debug,
minority are actually the SLO ones. And those should absolutely be on their path towards graduation. So I would like to propose, I think, to introduce a debug mode or debug state.
Internal?
I don't know.
Internal?
I'm fine with internal as well. It kind of reflects the same notion. And then the other thing was beta, which I guess we still need to figure out the actual semantics around this.
I wonder if making debug metrics disabled by default would help. As in, like, you get them if you ask for them.
I would do it the opposite, if at
Okay.
all. Yeah.
Well, we would be changing existing behavior. So yeah, we would have to have a flag that disables debug metrics. Otherwise, we could break people.
So keeping an eye on time, because we have one more thing on the agenda. Do we have somebody to own, drive, put together a proposal for what we want to see here? Because I don't have a great idea of what we want or who's gonna make that happen.
I am happy to work on it with anyone who is interested in it.
I'm happy to flesh out the details of each of the steps, because the more I think about it now, if we introduce a debug type, then I'm not sure a beta type is actually still needed, because then the alpha metric is actually the type that we are intending to eventually graduate, which was the thing that we wanted
This
beta
is
to
why
be.
I think that we should keep alpha as alpha and promote all of the alpha stuff to beta, but I think we just need a proposal. So I'm going to say in the notes, Han and Frederick, you can work on that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
We can move on to the next item.
Awesome.
Okay. Yeah. So let me talk about what I cooked up last week. So Han said that he really likes globals. So I think I am trying to get rid of one.
Oh no.
It's called K-Lock. I don't know if you heard about this, but it was small global. Yeah, really small, like one line global that became pretty big. So in short, to really graduate alternative logging formats, we need a way to like configure and manage and provide users like give users like assurance that this alternative format like has the same features, works the same, is like has the like work, will not break you, like basically will not break you. So for that we need to have comparable features that are provided by K-Lock and the here mostly JSON format as we are developing it further. So we brought with the 122 we implemented I think one feature that was missing, what was color information, so source code. So now you get the color information in your logs, which is great because there were many complaints. So we know that it's important, but we want to graduate it. We need to make sure that K-Lock and the JSON doesn't like go into different ways. That we have a core functionality that is delivered by both solution, and people can add more solutions. We don't over restrict, so we can add more alternative implementation of logging. One example, I think someone asked about integration in journal for kubelet. Like instead of having a text in your journal, as most people use systemd for your kubelet, it would be great if you just get structure logging in your kubelet in journal. So yeah, the proposal basically, it's over for now. Over aggressively gives you, let's deprecate everything that doesn't serve the original purpose of logging, but only deprecate it within core Kubernetes components and leave the K-Log people to their own. But we care about those components. I wanted to first go through SIG Instrumentation for your feedback, and then possibly to SIG Arch.
Have you talked to Jordan about this?
Jordan, I talked to. So I could ping him, but for now, no.
You should talk to Jordan, because Jordan cares very much about backwards compatibility and breaking stuff. And removing flags falls in the domain of stuff that I think Jordan would care very, very much about.
And is there any reason that we could not treat those flags as any other flag, as we are not breaking KLOC users, which is apparently a huge community of people that use KLOC? We just want to deprecate in Kubernetes, in the core components, those flags that we think are not needed. And we have already process for deprecation, like we can comply to it. And I then posed the question, are we okay with like dropping flags from KLOC or changing the flags for KLOC? We already did at some point change the flags. So basically Kubernetes went through standardizing the format, how flags use hyphens versus underscores, and we broke people.
So the thing that sucks about this is that like basically Klog uses very commonly used flag names that collide with other loggers. And so basically you can't test two loggers simultaneously because you have flag collisions. So it would be nice if we had like prefixes or something.
So I have a quick question, because I'm looking at the flags that are being proposed for deprecation, and it's not clear to me why they should be proposed for deprecation for JSON. Like looking at things like log file max size for like log rotation, like JSON logs on disk, you know, like you're going to have a full serializable log line, and then like, you know, that's when you would truncate. It wouldn't like truncate it halfway through the line. So I'm not sure why that would be considered not applicable. Similar for like writing to standard error versus standard out. Like this is a different file descriptor. Why does it matter where we're writing the JSON?
So, okay, about maybe starting from files. So like at the beginning of the proposal, I'll just say like I state that we should comply to some basic, you know, idea or have some set of rules that we want to comply, and having an application cared about logging like gives people so much weight way to use it and abuse it to add more features like writing to files, changing frequency of flashing and syncing to disk. I know I just read only recently that apparently KLOC syncs every 5 seconds, or Kubernetes syncs to disk, like calls a full sync on all your disk. That a sync on AXT free format, if you have Linux, syncs all the disk on data, all for disk, doesn't work for single files. So this is basically just to comply to those flags would be a nightmare to implement, and we need just a core. If we just standardize those three flags, it should be enough to get people. I understand like it would be useful for, I know, log rotation, but there are already so many tools that can like give you the same experience. And from what I know, like at some point we tried even to use those features of KLOC in Kubernetes, but they didn't pass our scalability tests. So those flags from scalability standpoint are broken because you cannot run a 5K cluster using logs that are written to disk, even though disk is capable to handle it. And DIM's written a separate binary that just ingests std out of Kubernetes components and writes this for KLOC, because KLOC cannot write them itself.
So I have a request, because that's not documented in the issue. So my request would be, can we make sure that and any motivating information for like why each flag we want to deprecate, because we may need to make a case-by-case call on them. So if we could include like sort of a table list thing with like, we don't want this because it's hard for these reasons, and so on. I think that would be helpful in trying to make a decision, because it sounds like we're going to break a lot of backwards compatibility. potentially. Like I know I've seen lots of bugs in terms of like, you know, kubelet like not possibly like supporting one of these flags properly. So I think people care.
Okay, let me just know.
Oh, and sorry, we're over time, so.
Yeah, so I will note that if you have any other ideas added to the issue or in the notes, I will take a look into. Don't want to take.
I have some ideas. We should talk about it offline.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Cool.
We are also 2 minutes over time. So I think that's a good idea to take that offline. We are 2 minutes, 3 minutes over time. Is there anything else that people want to say last word, or should we adjourn and see y'all next week?
I don't like globals. I was joking.
Just wanted to make that clear in the recording.
Yeah, just for the record.
All right. In that case, have a wonderful local time, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.